Really, the passion sort of kicked in when I joined a go-kart track. The one thing that a lot of people don't know, we opened Simply Race because we couldn't get a bank loan. So we opened it with £50 in the bank, not knowing if we were able to pay the next rent. We were actually refused like 3 different buildings because they didn't understand the business concept as well. Customers were coming in regularly because they saw racing drivers starting to use us. 4-time touring car champion is Colin Turkington. He's good friends with us. There's been a couple of occasions where he stuck it on pole position just after being at Simply Race, which is great. Very surreal moment when you got Mr. Delara and Mario Andretti just sat next to each other as they come in and you're organising the production. So I helped one ex-Formula 1 driver, which was David Brabham. So look after sort of the Esports program with him. I did at one point look after Jenson Buttons and Chris Bunkum's brand Rocket. But a lot of people don't know that bit as well.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Georgie's Stripping the Dipping podcast. I'm your host, F1 Black. This week's episode will surely go down as one of my favourites. Today's guest, Mike Yau, was at the vanguard of sim racing. So much so, as you heard in the intro, that when he was setting up his business, people had no idea what sim racing was. A decade of hard work has proven his gamble right. So, if you're interested in hearing the story behind one of the UK's leading sim racing venues, frequented by professional drivers might I add, then this episode's for you. So, without further ado, it's my great pleasure to welcome Mike Yau to the show. Mike, how are you doing?
I'm well. Nice to meet you.
Really keen to get into what you're doing now in the world of sim racing. But where did it all start? Going back to your first motorsport memories, what were they?
I actually came into motorsport quite late, to be honest with you. I think the first real memory was 11, 1996, Belgium Grand Prix, cars flying off turn 1 and crashing due to the wet weather. And then really the passion sort of kicked in when I joined a go-kart track back in Manchester. So I actually was at uni at the time and did part-time work there. Flipping burgers, actually. I wasn't actually on the track itself, so I was actually just watching go-karts go round and round in just a go-kart track and sort of worked my way through each department. So yeah, that's sort of where it began, and sort of about 18 when it really kicked off for me.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't remember that Belgian Grand Prix where, you know, they're all running back to get the spare car, as it were, because they've just completely destroyed millions of pounds worth of machinery.
They didn't care back then. I mean, their budgets were humongous. I know they're big now, but wow, yeah, it was different then.
Yeah, I think back then you'd have like, here's my practice engine, here's my qualifying engine. Okay, I'll put a new engine in for the race. So
yeah, it didn't matter back then.
No, exactly. It's interesting that you talk about coming to motorsport late and your sort of route into it. Yeah, I was looking at kind of your CV and that kart track was what, Daytona Motorsport. Is that right?
It was, yeah. So it was actually in Manchester, and literally down the road from a stone's throw away from Old Trafford, Manchester United football ground. I got a part-time job just because I actually just needed one. I was working in a bar at the time, which one of my dad's friends owned, and I just needed to top up my income. So essentially I was working, I think, Saturday evenings and Friday evenings. It was Saturday and Sunday at the restaurant. So I'd finish at midnight and then go back in at 10 a.m. At the restaurant just to do bar work. And also push dim sum trolleys as well. So my background's very peculiar once we really delve into it a bit. And then I think at the time I'd met my soon-to-be wife. We decided that I needed to sort of up my income and found Daytona. I think I applied for the receptionist role, actually. So front of house. I didn't want to be anywhere near catering because through growing up, my family had restaurants and takeaways, and every weekend came, I really didn't have another life but just to work and help the family out, which is fine. And it sort of grounded me to where and what I wanted to do, actually grounded me from where I am now to what I wanted to do. And then through Daytona, it's basically they brought me in because of the catering background, of course. I was flipping burgers. I was wearing the checkered flag trousers as well to go with it, and the uniform, and a hat, and yeah, just serving drinks and serving the customers. So essentially, I'll always remember that job, and I'll always remember the owner because he helped me out throughout that period. The way that I asked for a job to basically move through the departments was actually, it was late at night, an event had finished. The owner was there, sat there having a beer. I served him, and he asked me what I wanted to do with my life, which is always interesting when someone asks you that. And I essentially just said, yeah, I want to learn this business. I want to go through every department, and I want to be on track. I want to be there. I want to be a marshal. I want to wave a flag. I want to then look at the reception area. Then I actually went through this period where I went through everything: engineering, learned how to rebuild a car engine, learned about the sprockets and the clutch, and understanding sort of why certain things did what they did on the kart. How often we bent chassis, bent axles, track rod ends, and then went into the administration side of it more as well. So then did the administration for the company, that all the accounts, and helping the FD at the time with event analysis to know where all the income was coming in and out. Really delve, into the P&L and then management with them as well. So that was back in 2004, sorry, when I joined. 2003, 2004 when I joined. And then 2006 is when they offered me a position as assistant manager. And then a year later, I then became general manager with someone else at the time. So we became your general managers. Because I was so young, they were a bit concerned that I might not have the skill set at the time. And then a year later, I then took over as the main GM, and had been there for many years until I think I went back to university in 2000 and this is testing me now. I was 23. So I'd been there 4 years at that point, and then went back to university because I didn't complete the first year. Ironically, I didn't complete the second year. The second time I went back, I just completed my transcripts for the first year, and they offered me a job in Milton Keynes. Took that and opened up the venue. So the one thing that I didn't sort of allude to when the reason why I got offered the job in Milton Keynes was actually because I generated them making a loss every year to their first profit by changing the way that we operated, just by changing a few little things with direct costs, suppliers, and just renegotiating contracts essentially. And I was only 20, so between 21 and 24. Those 3 years is when I was general management, like really delving into negotiating, understanding contracts, licensing, and customer experience. That was the biggest thing that I took away from it, is how the customers experience from walking through the door to when they exited. It's like there was always a step, every process. And it's something that I took away, and hence why I was there. I was thanked them because essentially that's what kept me going in the hospitality industry along the way. That created Simply Race. The Milton Keynes job I took, and left my wife at that point, in terms of left her in another city, and then came to Milton Keynes. Took over the Daytona Milton Keynes site. Youngest general manager at the time. I was 24, turning on 25. I'd only stayed there for 18 months, and the reason being is that actually the one thing that I said during the time was if it started affecting my marriage at the time, I would walk away. And that's what I did. We then had a child, and I've got a 12-year-old boy now. So I left that in 2011, and then had my son in 2012. I actually left that job and took a sizable pay cut, 50% I took, to move back home. And I became assistant manager for Aldi supermarkets. So completely out of the window. Motorsport left my life at that point. It wasn't until 2013, 2014 when my business partner sort of put an ad out on Facebook, a post, and went, I've got a business proposition, and I'm willing to give up equity as would anyone like to invest. At this point, at Aldi, I was doing 100-hour weeks, so I was not spending any money. They were going through their major growth between 2011 and 2014, which meant that we weren't able to recruit staff members quicker than what we were putting stuff on the shelf, which was hilarious. So we were doing long hours, long days, 5 to 6 days a week. At the same time, I had a newborn son, so I and also reduced wages as well. So I had no choice. I had to stick it out. Did I enjoy it at first? I hated it. Like working in the supermarket was difficult, especially Aldi, because of the sort of the fast-paced nature and understanding the business. So, because when you come from corporate hospitality, everything's a little bit more slow-paced. Everyone enjoys being there, whereas shopping is a necessity. So you don't basically have the ability to enjoy the moment. You're there because it's a necessity. You need those things. And Aldi has a wide range of people that come through the door as well. So you're dealing with all walks of life, which makes you grow quite some thick skin, because you you can be treated very differently to what I was being treated before. So it was very different. However, it did get better. I started opening stores. I then started bringing in the computer-generated operating system to reorder stuff automatically rather than everything being very manual. Then became store manager for a few stores after some training and also some other projects. The one thing that I took away from that is basically I kept asking for projects. I was very greedy because of just wanting to learn constantly, because it's the only way that I knew that, just like anything in other job roles, you remain in the spotlight a little bit. You have to fight for those things as well. So I was listening back to some of your podcasts, actually, where Darren Cox talked about how things only really happen with people that sort of drive things forward and sort of rebel against the norm. And it was something that I constantly did within that company. It's just trying to understand what I could push forward within the means that I had at the time as a store manager. So I was always trialing stuff, reordering rotors. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Aldi was very all about direct costs with the hours that you used. It's the way that they sort of negotiated your commission in some sense, or bonuses each month. So the more you sort of did to save money, the more that you sort of got in return, which was great as a store manager, because ultimately, same again, I'd quit a job with good pay, with good benefits, and Aldi sort of returned that favour, which was great. However, with that, I was working full-time, 48-hour contract, and decided to open up Simply Race with Ben. Ben did all the hours, I'm not going to lie. He did the legwork, he did all the hard work. I felt like a bit of a consultant at times. It was nice to be back in motorsport. So that was definitely something to sort of push forward. We then, with that, a lot of people don't know this, but we were actually behind a lot of the tech support for World's Fastest Gamer. So if you delve into the Simply Race website and search World's Fastest Gamer, you'll know that the team behind it was actually Ben and some colleagues as well from Simply Race. So we actually were running that in the background. We were running the sims, we were running the R Factor 2 program, just because we ran it at the venue as well. And that sort of leapfrogged my business partner and them forward, which meant that I then moved into operations for the business. But that wasn't until I had a sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Time out of Aldi and going into haberdashery at Hobbycraft as a territory manager, which was interesting. I joined Hobbycraft, a haberdashery is basically knitting, sewing, painting, clay. And also I joined as the slime phase was in. So I don't know if you ever remember that. That was basically PVA glue, hundreds of it, and kids making little slime pots of different colours, beads, glitter. Yeah, I was part of that, and parents were going mental, coming in buying 5-litre bottles of PVA glue.
Sounds like chaos. As a parent, I'm not sure I can endorse this. I don't want any of PVA glue in my house. Keep it at Hobbycraft.
But yeah, it was quite funny, but I think people were actually selling it as well. So people were being very entrepreneurial at that point.
Ah.
But it was good to see. It definitely taught me some business lessons whilst I was there in terms of they managed very closely on sort of the stock rotation and also with the difference in what was going on at Etsy, for example, or Pinterest. They were trying to follow those particular ideas. And it's no different than sort of influencers in motorsport. So people are following what Red Bull are doing, for example, on their particular car and trying to copy them. Back in the day, it used to be Mercedes, and it's the same thing. All it is, it's just a different industry, different business, but it essentially comes down to the bottom line.
What I'm hearing here is like a load of hard work, dedication, and a desire to learn. So where do you think that comes from in you?
I think probably just growing up, to be honest with you. A lot of people think that where I came from was, I had a decent education and I grew up in a nice area and whatnot, but actually it's a bit removed from the truth. We lost our home back when I was 10. We lived in a hostel for a few months and in different locations, one bedroom. There was 5 kids and my mom. My dad was working away, trying to just make ends meet. We moved, I think it was 2 or 3 different hostels, 3 different hostels, because we had a temporary hostel at one point as well. I missed school for 2 to 3 months as well, just because we weren't able to register in certain schools. And then we eventually got a council house, 3 bedrooms for 6 of us to live in at the time. So my dad lived away, working for a company and then in restaurants. And my mum basically took care of us at the time. So we had to muddle through. So hence why I never want to go back to that point in my life. And just sort of the reason for learning was trying to help. And I'm not the greatest academic. However, I'm very hands-on, so I will still try and learn as much as I can. But I'll try and read as well a little bit, as much as I can as well, and take in what I can. But in regards to sort of where I think it came from, a lot of it comes from my dad, just pushing on. It's essentially, he had 6 kids. I've got 3 sisters, 2 brothers. All very fortunate. We all have good jobs. We've all worked, and we're very competitive. It's just a cultural thing, I think. Super competitive. We sort of talk about everything, but it ultimately comes down to who can win. I don't know why. It's just something we've always had, and just desire. We're not greedy, and I think that's the biggest thing, is that we haven't been greedy, and it's something that we carry on in Simply Race as well. Is we're there to make a living, but we're not there to make millions. I'm not too concerned about that right now. As long as I'm comfortable, I don't have to worry about where the next paycheck comes from, and I just want to just remain happy, as it were. I think that's probably the best way to explain it.
No,
a lot of people don't know that bit as well. A lot of people don't know about my growing up.
Well, thanks for sharing it, and I think our upbringings do have a huge impact on us. And every guest we've had, there's been often something that gives them a drive that is in some ways like superhuman, or that propels them to where they end up. So before we talk about Simply Race, you mentioned that you, end of a shift, end of an event, the owner of Daytona was sort of saying, what do you want to do? And you said, I want to learn this business. Was he the sort of guy that was just asking that question out of curiosity, or do you think he sort of saw something in you? And clearly it sounds like that was your sort of inverted commas apprenticeship. So how did you have the audacity to say, I want to learn this business? And what do you think made him say yes?
I think he could tell that I was either going to leave or learn, one of the two. So he decided, he said at the time it was Jolyon. I'll always remember Jolyon, great guy, still friends with him. He basically told him that he needs to put me in different departments and see how I get on. That was it. So, I think it was just me being a little bit forthright, just saying I want I want to do something different. I don't want to be stuck behind here. I mean, I'm wasted behind here. And yeah, lucky on me, it's just push forward. And you do have to go out and ask and take it if you want something. And I think that's why I did what I did. I just said it. I think I was just like, this is my opportunity. It's the only time I'm going to get. So I just said it.
No, of course. And I think often the moments we regret is when we don't say it. So clearly that had a huge impact. And then, so we're talking about Simply Race. You mentioned, and I'm thinking about what was the last time I was on Facebook. It's probably just to remember birthdays at this stage. But you say that your current business partner posted, "Look, I've got this business proposition." Like, I don't know. I am maybe less trusting than you. I don't know. Maybe not. If someone said, "Oh, I've got a business proposition," what made you think, "Okay, this is legit"? I'm up for investing in this. Like, how did that come about, and how trusting were you?
Well, it did help. I was his boss at one point.
You knew him?
Yeah, I'd known him for a long time prior. So I've known him since he was in university, actually. So he was in uni. I basically was his boss at Daytona Motorsport. Ironically, he then became the youngest general manager to take over Daytona Motorsport. So hence why I sort of knew his background and pedigree, and I sort of knew that if he was going to do something, he's going to do something well with the same mindset. And he has gone on. He's gone on to now be a VP of a blue chip company. He's got other business acquisitions. Yeah, it's not just what we have with Simply Race. So definitely we're on to a winner. So I basically just picked up the phone to him, to be honest with you. I literally just said to him, "Let's have a chat." And he told me the idea, which was ironic because I had the same phone call probably about 2 years earlier with someone else, but I didn't have the knowledge base or the capital at the time. So I said to him, "What did you want?" He told me a figure. I said, "Okay." Originally it was 10% of the company. And then out of nowhere, it then became 40% because I ended up putting more money than I expected to, which was great. It was fine. The one thing that a lot of people don't know, we opened Simply Race because we couldn't get a bank loan. So we opened it with £50 in the bank, not knowing if we were able to pay the next rent.
Wow.
And also,
would you describe yourself as, because it sounds like you're putting in the hard work, but would you also describe yourself as someone that like backs yourself? Because that's clearly like a bit of a gamble, albeit with your effort on the table.
Yeah, I mean, I trusted Ben quite a lot. Don't get me wrong. The wife at the time, she said to me, "Are you sure? You really sure this is going to work?" I was like, "Yeah, it's fine. It'll work. And it was definitely a tight time. I actually put all of I think I put part of the assets on my house against my house at the time, which was a huge gamble because they needed a guarantor and I didn't have the working capital, and plus the business not having any background in numbers or anything like that. And we're two fresh-faced guys just starting up something that no one understood as well. We were actually refused like 3 different buildings because they didn't understand the business concept as well. So to you now, you may be thinking, really? You don't understand sim racing? But actually, when you think 2014, 10 years ago, not many people did. There was less than 10 simulator venues in the UK, across the UK as well. And the way that I used to describe it is early 80s, where people really didn't understand go-karting. So go-karting had been around for years, but people only ever thought it was for the really, really rich. Didn't know where to go and get a go-kart or a license to race that go-kart. And sim racing was exactly in that same sort of era. It's only COVID sort of coming around where it sort of propelled it into the faces of everyone with Le Mans Virtual and sort of the other events. Apologies, dog barking in the background.
Luckily, I didn't hear it. So, we've introduced your dog. Brilliant. Welcome. What's the name of your dog?
Jace.
Okay.
Apologies, though. I'm glad that you can hear that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so basically, COVID sort of helped sort of propelled that. But at the same time, Simply Race was closed, so it's a very difficult time for us. But yeah, that's sort of where Ben and I sort of got together and started the brand. It started off with 10 simulators as well in Milton Keynes in a 3,000 square foot building. So it was quite empty.
Were they all together, or did you space them out a bit? Or
there were 5 on each side because it was a rectangular building. But when you walked in, it was super imposing. Yeah, it was empty. I mean, we had pictures on the walls as much as we could fill. We stole his mum's sofa, a 3-seater and a 2-seater sofa. We bought some IKEA tub chairs and some little coffee tables. I know Ben built the podium as well. But it was sparse. I mean, yeah, it basically we opened it with what we had and just tried to make it work. And thankfully, it was received well. Otherwise, I won't be here talking about it.
So let me ask you a question here, right? Because clearly, yeah, you said people were sort of quizzical about this idea and, weren't sure about it. Look, I grew up I'm born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s. I can still remember Sega Rally, Toyota Celica, jumping over the little thing and it says start, you put your 50p in. So what elevates that into sim racing? What kind of is the standard that says I'm no longer in a kind of Sega park or an arcade? Look, see, I'm showing my age, and I'm actually in a sim racing venue.
Yeah, so that was always the difficult bit at the very start, even with customers. We had a customer, ironically, they were at a Porsche event, and they said that they queried a birthday party, which was, I think at the time we were charging £13.50 per child for an hour party. And he came back to me and said, "Oh, you're very expensive." And I had to sort of allude to the fact that you're not paying for an arcade machine. You are paying for the ability to race a car on track that you wouldn't be able to in real life. And being able to experience that differently. And we had to sort of remind people that you would have to drive on the simulators as if you were driving a real car. Otherwise, if you kept saying it was a game in your head, you wouldn't enjoy the experience because you'd just be expectancy to go around a corner with it on rails, like you would do on a Daytona arcade machine, for example, when you're doing the ovals, etc., like that, which is quite funny. So it was definitely educating the public. It was definitely the hardest bit, especially for the first few years. Once we got to a position 2 years in, we sort of got more and more acceptance, and also customers were becoming in regularly because they saw racing drivers starting to use us. So they, the racing drivers were coming in, real world ones, and actually using us for muscle memory, just for the tracks. They didn't know if they hadn't been to a certain circuit before, they would practice with us and then head off. And we still get that to this day. We have a lot of people come to the centre just to do some muscle memory. You're never going to get it exact because, of course, you can't mimic inertia. You can have motion, but there's certain elements that you're never going to get with the G-forces. And that is something that we sort of play on a little bit. We use real-world drivers to help with our R&D, with the setups of the sims to make sure they feel as much or as close as they possibly could do with the real cars. And it's something that we sort of push forward as well in our sort of marketing campaigns, letting them know that we do work with real-world teams, real-world drivers, and what you're getting is real-world data out these simulators these days as well. So it's a lot closer than it used to be. However, the other flip side of it is that we also make sure that when you do come and drive a sim, it's not 100% going to be 100% accurate, because if it is, you probably won't enjoy the experience because you probably always put it in a wall. So we do make very safe sort of setups on the actual sim rigs themselves to make sure the public are enjoying them, because we are mass market rather than very ISO and F, which is sort of more to do with driver performance and development.
No, of course. And so my wife surprised me for my birthday. I won't say the year that I'm celebrating, but it was earlier this month. We went to the F1 arcade down in like Bank, St Paul's in London. And yeah, the 5 different modes you can be on. And I went with my 2 young sons as well, who are 6 and 9. So the 6-year-old not quite reaching the pedal, but doing his best. And yeah, you could have it on the kind of easiest setting and it would pretty much be on rails. But as soon as you start moving up, like the thing that got me was putting my foot down out of a corner. If I was not very, very careful, I would just spin immediately. Like it would just spin up. So you're right. Like it must be painfully irritating to have the setting on exactly what Lewis Hamilton feels under his right foot. I don't know. Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah. We have that with drivers all the time. So they would come in and just say the car's under steering more because that's how you generate. That's how you build a safer setup for the public. Because a lot of people tend to overcorrect, or they'll turn the steering wheel full lock, as most people do. Yeah, just imagine it. You just want to turn and you want it to just go. But in real world terms, your car doesn't do that. So why would you do that on a simulator? So there's sort of a fine balance that we work with, especially with the leisure industry as a whole. Especially when you've got kids, we deal with a lot of children from the age of 7 through to 14, and a lot of those younger kids, some are great and some just still think it's a game. So we just have to make sure that they're aware, and we give a lot of advice whilst we're sort of teaching the kids whilst they're on the simulators, and well, not just the kids actually, the adults as well. We give them a lot of coaching, and yeah, that's definitely something. People don't listen to their peers, but sometimes they'll listen to us because it makes more sense when we're telling them.
Yeah, like I think I'm probably the sort of person that would be like, yeah, whatever, I'll just do it. And then, yeah, we had, I think 5 races. It's probably like a standard sort of F1 sim package. And by the final race, I had it on pro, and I was making mistakes. I was catching the pack, and I was there, and then I just make a quick mistake. But I know for a fact that if someone had said, "Oh, do be careful," like the first time I sat down to do it, I would just have not listened and driven off. So you mentioned that you had 10 simulators when you started, and am I right in thinking this is in Milton Keynes, right? Or have I made that up? Yeah. So
that's right.
Yeah, so you're in the motorsport triangle. You start with 10 sims. You talked also about, like, you were thinking when you're at Daytona about the experience from when they walk in to when they walk out. So can you describe that experience now? Are you in the same venue? How's it changed? And what is it like as you walk in?
Yeah, we actually moved out of that particular unit in 2020 December. So we gave the keys back because the landlords, during COVID, actually increased our rent by 25%. So we didn't have a choice. We were like, okay. And at the same time, when our rent review was due, I decided to go out because we had a break clause anyway. So we thought, actually, year 6, we could just walk away if we're not happy anymore. Luckily, the guys over at 12th Street, which is central Milton Keynes, we're next to Ski Centre, we're opposite Pop World, a nightclub, which is sort of good and bad, I guess. We've got the theatre, we've actually got the shopping centre near us, so we get a lot of passing trade. So we decided to move, and we actually moved to central Milton Keynes and reopened the doors in May 21. Yep, 2021. And then from there, we haven't looked back. The experience itself, you come into the venue, you're greeted at the desk immediately from one of the members of the staff, and they guide you through everything from the beginning to the end. So they'll ask you to sign in. We don't take many details, but your name, your email, we don't even take unless you want your email, all your data sent out. Otherwise, you just put your full name. So you just put your first and last name, and we don't take anything else. The reason for that is your lap times are then allocated to your name and your driver profile, as it were. You then jump onto the website at simplyrace.co.uk, click on lap data. You then type your name in that you gave to us, and every single lap that you've ever completed at the venue since 2016 in September, we have all this data, is now available. And on top of that, if you click the little graph that's next to your name, it will give you your telemetry data. So it'll give you your speed through the corners, your braking, your steering input, your acceleration input on your pedals. And also it'll compare your lap against the best lap time ever in that car and track combination as well. So we provide all the data available from the platform. And what we do whilst the drivers are on site is basically teach you how to go back out. So you'll do a 20-minute session, for example. That'll cost you $11.50. However, if you want to go out for another 20 minutes, it won't cost you another $11.50. It'll cost you $9.50. And then the price goes down the more time you take. So it's $26.50 an hour, which is less than half the price of go-karting. And we break it up to 3 20-minute segments. So you come in, you have your session, you come off. The race director or the other member of staff will come to you, ask you if you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, you can either carry on with the car and track combination you've got, or we will actually change that car and track combination if you're struggling, or if you found it too easy, we'll up the ante, as it were. Throughout that period, we would be watching each of the drivers to just double check they're okay, they're enjoying themselves, they're making sure that it's almost like you feel like you're being looked after by an engineer throughout. Someone's there to make sure that you're well fed, well watered, and also you're being taught how to drive the simulators in a manner that makes you enjoy it and go quicker at the same time. And that was the biggest sort of key part that we always implement within Simply Race is the experience from sort of start to finish. So at the end of your session, we'd give you we generally wouldn't print off anything anymore because of the paper waste and also environmental stuff. But what we do is sort of bring up the website on. We've got 2 65-inch screens behind the desk and also 2 75-inch monitors up on the wall. So we'd actually bring your data up so you can compare against the other drivers and sort of teach you how to sort of read the telemetry data that's coming out as well. We have a lot of drivers come back just to beat their lap time. That's what they come down for. They don't actually come for trying to beat their mate, as it were. It was always just about the lap time. So you tend to have a lot of customers come in driving one particular car, one particular track, and they'll just do it for an hour. Nürburgring is probably the worst for it, though, because you have to have a lot of time. So when you're driving the full Nürburgring circuit, Nordschleife, we actually run a Monday night session where it's just 2 hours straight. You can stop when you want, but you literally just have 2 hours just to pound laps. And a lot of drivers come to us to do their site recce or their lap before they head out to the Nürburgring themselves in their real cars. So that's one thing a lot of people don't know.
That's fascinating. And I was thinking earlier when you were saying about that data that it would make me obsessed. You are a very smart guy. Like repeat custom, like the percentage must be incredible. So you mentioned having some actual professional drivers, particularly in the early days or as you built through, coming and just using it for muscle memory. Were there any that you could share the name of that we might have heard of, or is it kind of keep it quiet? Yeah.
No. Current existing British touring car, 4-time touring car champion is Colin Turkington. He's good friends with us.
Wow.
He comes down periodically, probably a week before he's due to be on track. Grant, who's the general manager who looks after the venue on our behalf, he is essentially his data engineer for his practice sessions. So when he wants to make a particular change on the car, because we have his 3 series within the simulator, so we had it built previously, but now Studio 397 actually created the actual mod, not the mod, the actual car itself. Sorry. So he can make intricate details, toe, camber, suspension rebound, and power bands as well. So we can sort of give him less or more boost on the hybrid, on the push to pass button. So what Grant does with Colin is quite detailed. They sit down, they analyse what track they've got coming up, they analyse the weather, and then they'll set up the server based on temperatures and the weather, and also track temp as well, so to make sure that we're sort of mimicking everything that could possibly have out there. There's been a couple of occasions where he stuck it on pole position just after being at Simply Race, which is great. And he modified the car in real world to be the same feeling as he got on the sim as well. So it does work. It just you need to hear it from the horse's mouth, though, because he does come to us quite a bit. So there is a YouTube video somewhere. So if you sort of search it, Colin Turkington, Simply Race ITV, it should pop up.
Oh, we'll definitely look that up. And I'm obsessed with your venue now. And so my co-host, Dens, is a bit of a sim racer. He's going to be offended that I say a bit of a sim racer. He's sort of won, I think, the Daytona 24. He's won his class in Le Mans. He was recently invited to the sort of AMG Mercedes. I'm going to not do it justice, but basically had a sim racing event. He was in the sort of second division and won that race. So I'm going to say to him, look, right, let's drive up to Milton Keynes and he'll smash me, but I'll at least wind him up on the way there. So tell us a bit about. Is it AK Esports or is it pronounced altogether? It's an Italian company, but you're the UK CEO. Is that right?
Yeah. So AK Esports is a global brand. So Alessio is sort of the group CEO. I head up the UK arm with the London office. So the Italian office is Bergamo, but we now got a North America office with Dallara. So we run events with them. So we signed a contract or inaugurated the company, in May. So just before the Indy 500. So I was out there with them sort of to help with production and also the setup and sorting out everything. Very surreal moment when you got Mr. Dallara and Mario Andretti just sat next to each other as they come in, and you're organising the production with the commentators, etc. as well. So really great experience. Indy 500. I mean, if you ever got an event that you want to tick off that bucket list, please do, because it was something else. The one thing that I did do was not hospitality. I actually, got the offer to go on a grid walk and whatnot. I actually gave it to the commentator, which was great because it was a good experience for him. And I did it like a spectator. I went to the grandstands. I did the tailgate party where you have a drink before with the back of the trucks and stuff with people, and then sat in the grandstand. So I was at turn 3. Literally, as the race unfolded on the last corner, on the last lap, and it was something surreal. The fans being amongst everyone was fantastic. And definitely something a little bit different. But AK Esports in the UK essentially is event management in esports, esports productions, so TV outputs, and also including the streaming side, broadcast. We also do simulator hire and activations at events, so such as exhibitions. So if you wanted a racing simulator branded, for argument's sake, we're working with the British Army at the moment, so we would brand the entire simulator as British Army. We would have their livery on the car as well within the game, and then they would use that as an engagement piece, for example. So for exhibitions, that would be the likes of like Sony or Samsung or whatever company you're working with. We would basically provide the simulator, create a leaderboard for them, nice and shiny, on an electronic board, and get people to set fastest laps. And a lot of the time you'd have a giveaway, or a lot of people would just have it for fun. So we were at the British Motor Show recently, and we were just basically setting lap times and taking pictures with everyone and sticking it on the big screen, which was all good fun, basically. And that's what the AK Esports UK side do. But we predominantly cover all of the esports production for the AK group. So we're responsible for that. So we do the SRO esports series. So it's currently the Intercontinental GT Challenge. Excuse me. And we covered Asia, America, Europe previous years. But prior to that, for the last 3 years, I was traveling with the SRO Circus for the Endurance Challenge in Europe. And on site, we would bring 24 simulators where the real world drivers would race for real world championship points, along with 10,000 euro prize money for the winner as well. So we did that, and then on the production side, and then what happened is that the real world drivers would then race the same circuit but in real world. So we do it virtually and then real world as well. So if you ever have a chance, look at the SRO Pro Sim, they called it. So the drivers would basically, GT, Pro GT Sim, and the real world drivers would race for their points and win some money at the same time, which was great. Sort of spectacle, because it was very different. No one in history has done that, where they raced virtually for real world championship points. towards the championship or that particular race or the actual global championship. So it was very different. We've done a couple of Spa 24 hours, and we also do online with the Nürburgring, which will be coming up next week as well. So lots to do.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're a busy guy. I'm trying to figure out how you packed it all in. So a couple of questions as we bring the episode to a close. And this has been really fascinating, this kind of mix of your determination, the kind of hard work, desire to learn, and how you've ended up where you have with that kind of getting ahead of the rest on sim racing. But going back to when you were go-karting, right? One of my beliefs is that, all those people that work in the karting center, when you can see when they're like bringing the carts back, whatever, they're able to like spin turn that thing and just put it in position really quickly. So when they shut the doors, were you kind of going around? Did you kind of become quite a good little driver, when you were in the kind of track side there?
Yeah, there was an element that I was not a bad karter, to say the least. And to be honest with you, I actually got some private backing to do some sort of corporate hospitality events and stuff. We did like the 12 and 24-hour events on different tracks and stuff with friends. Well, he actually became a very good friend and an investor for another company that I've got now. But he sort of asked me to join him one day, and that was it. So yeah, you do get the bug, and you still want to race. And I don't get me wrong, I've had sort of ideas to get a race license now and actually jump in a real world car event. But I think I want to go and buy a house first again. I'll do that before I go and spend thousands or hundreds of thousands on real world racing. So yeah, I'm holding myself back, but I don't know how quick I'll be, actually. That's another question.
I think you'd, even if you didn't start off very quick, you'd figure it out. It seems like obviously some of it is about natural reflexes, but I'm sure the determination would be there. And maybe at this point, it's kind of like when you have too much of a good thing, you're like, oh, I can take it or leave it. But like when it's sim racing, given that you started off with that 3,000 square foot venue, 10 simulators, when you started up and even now, do you pop in and like have a go yourself and, beat your own time?
No, I actually got simulator at home.
Of course you do.
I turned it on twice since I got it.
Ah, okay.
So no, don't have time, unfortunately.
Busy guy.
Yeah, I've got too much going on, unfortunately. I've also helped, a couple of esports teams as well. So that's with drivers and sponsorship and,
really?
and stuff. So that, yeah. So I helped one ex-Formula One driver, which was David Brabham.
Oh, cool.
So look after sort of the esports program with him. I did at one point look after Jenson Buttons and Chris Bunkum's brand Rocket. So we sort of did that just after COVID, as it were, and we tried to sort of take leverage of the fact that esports was still there, but it just didn't correlate enough in terms of the brand pushing forward, and it was very difficult. So it's still there. I mean, if you Google sort of Rocket Sim Sport, it's still around, but it's just idle at the moment. And then for the Brabham side, it's still sort of pushing forward and gaining a little bit more momentum, because that's more to do with historic and legacy for David. He wants to keep that brand sort of known to sort of the next generation. A lot of people still, if you look back at history, don't know that he used to race in Formula One and what the name actually represents, with his dad Jack winning the championship back in the 70s. So we're still trying to drive that heritage side forward for him to the sort of the new audience, and esports seems to be sort of the best way to do it for him.
Gosh, I haven't thought about that. I mean, clearly I haven't, and you have, but like, you talked about a car and a track that you couldn't do in real life, and now you're talking about a year that you don't exist in, and you could be there driving the car. That's incredible. Before we ask our sort of usual end of interview question, and it seems like you've been doing your research, so I'm intrigued about your answer. Is there anything you'd like to kind of leave our listeners with? Any final messages? And obviously, where can we sort of follow what you get up to and what your ventures are doing?
I haven't got really any particular final message for the audience itself. I think the one thing I'd say is, if you want to get into motorsport, there are other different avenues. So you don't have to be the driver. You can be an engineer. If you can't be an engineer because of you're not great at maths. There's the other side of it. You've got the content creation, you've got graphic design. A lot of people love the fact that you can design an entire livery and have that placed upon a car. One person in particular enjoys liveries, for example. He races in different categories, BMW or the Fun Cup, which is sort of the VW Beetles that race around in endurance series. He designed liveries, and he sort of was able to then afford to be able to go racing because of it. He's wrapping people's cars, which is something that is, a different type of business within motorsport. You got the administration if you want to go become an ASN. So if you want to go and work for Motorsport UK, you can apply to be one of the sort of stewards, clerk of the course, and still be involved. I mean, if you want to do it voluntary and you're happy doing that, you can become a marshal as well. Everyone talks about the Orange Army and how they're sort of, without them, you can't really go racing as well. So, there are other means to get into motorsport. And for myself, I did it very differently and very late on. I've come in virtually to then go into the real world. So I help real world drivers with sort of sponsorship and acquisitions as and when I can, but also connecting brands as well that would look at real world motorsport, but they wouldn't look at virtual, and the other way around. There are certain brands that probably you wouldn't think of coming into the real world of motorsport, that are sort of breaking into it now. But yeah, that's sort of the only thing I can probably say for people to take away from this particular episode, I hope. Hopefully that helps.
No, brilliant. And everyone get down Milton Keynes. You say it was 12th Street?
Yeah, 12th Street. I'm not sure if I should say anything. I'm not signed a contract yet, but I'm opening another venue.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
I've
just told you. Yeah, ... but it should be, I hope, open before the end of the year. So,
okay.
So yeah, look out for that stuff on our socials. But yeah, if you ever want to follow what I'm getting up to, it's Mike Yau 8 on Instagram.
I'm terrible with Instagram in that I have one with linked to my sort of account, but I'm always on Twitter or X. I'm never on Instagram. And then there are all these DMs that I don't reply to. There was a chap that we interviewed who said, "Oh yeah, I might have some friends coming around the Williams factory," and I left him unread for a month. And I was, damn it. So I will be better on Instagram. At least you'll get one follower from this, and I'm sure you'll get a few more as well. So it's come to the moment. Because you're a reluctant caterer, right? Maybe that could be like your third autobiography. You kind of, I don't want to do catering. Ended up, you described it as flipping burgers. That was your first job in motorsport, I guess. I take it that, in motorsport, I've been to a few go-kart tracks. The hot dog seems to be the key staple. Was there the slice of pizza, or was that a little bit too sophisticated for the venue?
Oh no, definitely not. We served like beef stroganoff and hot pots and all sorts of different stuff. So no, it wasn't. We actually only got a hot dog machine quite late on as well. Thinking about it, so.
You guys were too hearty, too kind of like earnest in the offer. So I guess then you are a culinary expert. I've undersold who you are. So occasionally you'll eat pizza. I take it.
Oh yeah, I had one the other day.
There we go. So question, and Mario Andretti, so he'll be listening. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Yes.
Wow. You said that with conviction. Is that something you stand by?
I stand by it, but I haven't had it for a long time, probably about 10 years, but I'm not bothered. It's a fruit, just enjoy it.
There you go. It's a fruit, just enjoy it. That feels like a strapline. We need to have that somewhere. Well, look, Mike, it's been a real pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much. Guys, I think you'll agree that it's been a fantastic episode. And if you do, then drop us a thumbs up or a 5-star review. I don't even know if they have that anymore because I'm stuck in 2009, but that's me. But wherever you are, give us your comments. Come and find us at Strip the Dip on all your social media delights. You'll see I won't reply to you on Instagram, but on X, I'll be straight in your mentions. So this has been F1 Blag. It's been a great pleasure to have Mike Yau with us. Until next time, good night.